Good afternoon, and welcome to the eHealth eQuality Incentive Program, the Long-Term Post-Acute Care Application Orientation webinar. This webinar is designed to be a review of specific elements of the eQIP solicitation application requirements. Previous webinars that reviewed the solicitation eligibility and milestone requirements in detail are available for viewing on the MIHI website, mihi.masstech.org. It would also be helpful to review the frequently asked questions document on the MIHI website. In today's webinar, we will present a brief overview of this solicitation, the eHealth Equality Incentive Program for long-term post-acute care provider organizations, including the application process. We will then review the individual components and requirements of application process for this solicitation, including eQIP eligibility, criteria substantiation, and attestation requirements, and other application requirements, such as proposal narrative and current health IT substantiation. We will also briefly review the process and timelines. My name is Judy Iwanski. I'm the manager of the eHealth eQuality Program. Also with me today to answer questions are Lisa Erlitzson, the Director of Financial Operations and Controller for MassTech, Sean Kennedy, Director of eHealth Programs for MIHI, Ross Venables, the Grants and Contracts Administrator for MassTech, and Olivia Joplin, eHealth Programs Coordinator for MIHI. There will be time at the end to answer questions submitted during this presentation. However, if we run out of time, you may also submit additional questions in writing. The Q&As will be posted on the MassTech and Combis websites, as well a copy of this presentation. This presentation is an overview intended to address selected questions about the application documents. Applicants should read the important details about each application requirement that are contained within the solicitation itself. To the extent that anything stated or presented in this webinar is inconsistent with the RFP, the solicitation written document shall govern. Applicants must follow the deadlines and requirements in the solicitation section 4.1, Application and Submission Instructions. MassTech reserves all rights to amend, modify, or otherwise clarify the solicitation and any written answers to questions presented. It is the respondent's responsibility to check the MassTech or Combis websites for additional addenda or modifications to the solicitation. Please review the solicitation carefully. Non-responsive applications will be rejected. So in brief, the objective of the eHealth Equality Incentive Program, or eQIP, is to promote effective use of interoperable EHRs by eligible long-term post-acute care provider organizations in an effort to improve the quality and efficiency of health care in the Commonwealth while containing costs. Note that this incentive program is for eligible organizations, not eligible providers, such as under meaningful use. eQIP payments will be made to organizational applicants. This slide shows the application requirements and deadlines. Be sure to follow the process exactly as it is laid out in the solicitation, including formatting. Late or incomplete applications will not be accepted. Both electronic and hard copies of the application are due by 3:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday, April 2nd, 2015. MIHI has developed a checklist available on the MIHI website that applicants can use as guidance when completing their application packets for submission. As I said, a list of frequently asked questions, which is regularly updated, is also on the website. After the filing deadline, MIHI may or may not seek additional information from an applicant prior to making selections. MIHI will issue a notice of grant award for each application selected for funding that will stipulate the period of performance, the targeted milestones, the terms and conditions of the award, and reporting requirements. To be eligible for participation in the incentive program, organizations must meet all of the eligibility criteria, as we are just going to go through in the next slides. They must hold a valid license to provide long-term post-acute care services. They have no financial relationship or affiliation with an acute hospital system. They must serve a large proportion of public payer clients, and they must not be eligible for the EHR incentive payment program. It is important that organizations attest and substantiate to MIHI's satisfaction that they meet each of the criteria and are eligible to participate in this program. MIHI must have sufficient information to verify that each grantee meets the eligibility criteria to allow their participation. The first criteria for eligibility is that the organization must hold a currently valid Level 1 or Level 2 license for long-term care facility or unit granted by the Mass Department of Public Health. MIHI recognizes that the term long-term post-acute care often includes a wide array of care services and settings, including nursing homes, assisted living facilities, senior housing with services and supports, home health, and hospice. However, to be eligible for this solicitation, an organization must have at least one Level 1 or Level 2 long-term care facility or unit licensed by the Mass Department of Public Health. A copy of that Level 1 or Level 2 license must be submitted with the application. The second eligibility criteria is that the organization must not be affiliated with an acute care hospital system. Entities are deemed to be affiliated for the purposes of this solicitation if their financial statements are part of the same consolidated financial statements under generally accepted accounting principles, one controls the other directly or indirectly within the meaning of federal securities law, or they are under the common control with the meaning of the federal securities law. A complete corporate organizational chart must be included with the application. The third eligibility criteria is that more than 50% of the organization's patient service revenue must be public payer, for example, Medicare or Medicaid. It is important to note that here, patient service revenue, or PSR, should be calculated for all of an organization's long-term post-acute care facilities in the state. That's Mass Department of Public Health license levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. However, the PSR should not include revenue from outpatient or other services that may be performed at those licensed facilities. Applicants must complete documentation of their PSR in the chart found in attachment A1B of the solicitation. It is critical that the appropriate supporting documentation, such as a Uniform Financial Statements and Independent Auditor's Report, or UFR, accompany the completed chart. We strongly suggest that organizations include a spreadsheet that clearly supports eligibility criteria by tying the information provided in the form back to the UFR supporting documentation. This slide shows the PSR chart that is in attachment A1B. Please also include a brief explanation of the organization's long-term post-acute care services. It should be broken out in the supporting documentation or explained in a table. The fourth eligibility criteria is that the organization may not be an eligible hospital or have eligible professionals as defined by the federal EHR incentive programs. This criteria may be substantiated by a letter from the CEO or CFO attesting that the organization does not meet the criteria of an eligible hospital or have clinicians that meet the criteria, the definition of eligible professionals, under the CMS, Medicare, and Medicaid EHR incentive programs. An exception to this rule: if an organization has some eligible professionals, it may still be eligible for the eQIP program if those eligible professionals that assign their EHR incentive program revenue to the organization total less than 30% of the organization's clinical staff. If claiming this exception, the organization must provide documentation demonstrating the total number of clinical staff, the percent which are eligible professionals, and where those eligible professionals assign their EHR incentive program revenue. We will not be going into detail about the eQIP milestones in this presentation. Please review the previous webinars on our website for additional detail. In general, the requirements for each milestone are as follows. Milestone 1, submission of a transformation plan that has been approved by MIHI and completion of a highway use case development form. Milestone 2, requirements include a description of the organization's certified EHR technology, demonstration of foundational use of the certified EHR technology, a plan to engage all clinicians who diagnose or prescribe and prepare them for the use of the cert, and a description of the organization's policies and procedures adopted to protect electronic health information. Milestone 3 requires a demonstration of advanced use of certified EHR technology, plus an updated description of the grantee's technology. Milestone 4, which can be met at any time after milestone 1, requires a copy of the organization's Health Information Exchange or Mass Highway Participation Agreement, attestation from the grantee and its unaffiliated trading partner that production transactions are being sent or received for the use case described in the highway use case form, and a description of the organization's approach to operationalize opt-in patient consent as required for the Mass Highway. Grantees will be paid 25% of the total incentive for each milestone achieved. This chart represents the tiered payment structure for eQIP grantees. The milestone payment amounts are tiered by size based on the total number of DPH licensed beds, that's level 1, 2, 3, and 4, that an organization owns and operates in Massachusetts as follows. Small organizations are up to 60 licensed beds. Medium organizations are from 61 to 180 licensed beds. Large organizations are from 161 to 300 licensed beds. And very large organizations have greater than 300 licensed beds. In order for MIHI to verify the correct payment tier for each grantee, applicants must complete the long-term post-acute care profile form found in the solicitation. An example is on your screen. The deadline to submit a notice of intent to submit application has passed. However, submission of the non-binding notice of intent would still be helpful and is recommended as it will assist MIHI in its review of grant applications. Organizations will be eligible whether they do or do not submit a notice of intent. As stated in the solicitation, numerous documents must be submitted at the same time as the application on April 2nd. These include eligibility substantiation documents, including the organizational long-term post-acute care profile form and a PSR chart with the supporting documentation that we reviewed earlier in the webinar. Other documents include a proposal narrative, which has an 8-page limit, a substantiation form of your current use of health IT, an officer's certification form, a signed organizational approval letter stating support for the proposed project, an application summary sheet form, and an authorized application signature and acceptance form. We will review these requirements in the next slides. The proposal narrative is a critical part of the application. Each of the items must be addressed. It is important to note that each section has a definite size limit. The total narrative must not exceed 8 pages. Otherwise, your narrative may not be thoroughly reviewed. It is especially critical that the narrative abstract capture the significant details of your organization's approach to meeting program objectives. This will be used to orient reviewers to each applicant's proposal and will facilitate contract scope writing. The statement of need should describe why the organization requires the funds available through this grant program. The project approach should provide a synopsis of the organization's proposed approach to adopt and use health IT, currently in use and/or that needs to be procured, in order to meet each proposed milestone. Each applicant is also required to estimate the total cost of this project and the timeline to reach each milestone. Applicants should also discuss their health IT status and, if applicable, fill out the EHR product table in Attachment B. This includes information such as product, vendor, version, chapel number, status, care setting, and extent used in the organization. Applicants must also describe their health information exchange status. They are currently using an HIE or the Mass Highway, how they are connected, land, webmail, EHR Direct, and how they are using. If they are not using a Mass Highway or another HIE, applicants should describe how their organization intends to use the highway as they progress through the milestones. Health system integration. Applicants should describe how the organization will support efforts to integrate long-term post-acute care services with other care settings. For example, settings that the patient is referred to or from. Examples might include coordinated treatment plans or maintaining continuity of care. In-kind resources. Applicants shall describe those resources that the organization intends to provide to supplement or support the eQIP incentive payments, plus their estimated value. An applicant must designate a project manager for the entire length of the project and describe how senior leadership will oversee the initiative. Value of investment. Applicants shall describe how receipt of these incentive payments will help achieve long-term benefits to the Commonwealth and meet the state's healthcare policy goals. Examples might include leveraging health IT and interoperable EHR systems to improve patient health, coordination of care across service providers, transitions of care, or a reduction in healthcare costs. Anticipated challenges. Applicants shall describe anticipated challenges and problems that they envision may occur in meeting these milestones and ways that it will be able to address them. Applicants are required to attest to the level of health IT that is currently implemented and available to care providers in the organization. This is required in order that we may determine an organization's health IT baseline for the program. In Attachment A2, the organizations are required to attest whether or not they have a certified EHR implemented that serves as the core EHR supporting patient care. If an applicant attests that it has implemented CERT, it must then complete the chart in Attachment A2, as is illustrated on this slide, and attest to the level of health IT that is implemented in the organization and available to care providers. Attachment A3, the Officer Certification Form, is a 2-page document designed to ensure that the organization's leadership attests to the accuracy of the statements submitted in the application. It must be filled out and signed by your organization's CEO or CFO. Similarly, the CEO, CFO, or board chair should write and sign a short letter clearly indicating that the organization supports the efforts and goals of the eQIP project. The signed organizational approval letter stating support for the proposed project, application summary sheet form, an authorized application signature and acceptance form. Applicants certify they have complied with the terms, conditions, and specifications contained in this solicitation. MIHI will review each application submitted against the following criteria. Compliance. Has the applicant met each of the 4 eligibility criteria, including all attestation and substantiation requirements? Need. Has the applicant described why they need the funding and how other sources of funds or resources are insufficient to meet organizational goals? Feasibility. Has the applicant described a feasible approach for meeting the 4 eQIP milestones and for achieving a more advanced state of integration and use of health IT? Ability. Has the applicant demonstrated the ability to meet the guidelines and conditions as are laid out in the solicitation? Capacity. Has the applicant sufficiently indicated organizational capacity to carry out their proposed approach for achieving the milestones? Commitment. Has the applicant demonstrated its commitment to meeting the intent of the grant and the milestones? And impact. Has the applicant addressed how it intends to use its EHR and other health IT to support the Commonwealth healthcare policy objectives? This timeline slide repeats the important dates related to the RFP. A copy of these slides and a recording of the webinar will be made available on the MIHI website. Complete applications are due by 3:00 p.m. on April 2nd. We anticipate the final eQIP awards will be announced in May of 2015. The next 2 slides summarize what we've talked about. Eligibility criteria substantiation documentation required to be submitted with an application includes a copy of a currently valid Level 1 or Level 2 license for long-term care facility or unit is granted by the Mass Department of Public Health. It's attachment A1. An organizational long-term post-acute care profile form, attachment A1A. Patient service revenue documentation substantiating that greater than 50% of patient service revenue, that's for all 4 levels, DPH license levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, is public payer. Applicants must complete attachment A1B, the chart, and appropriate supporting documentation. Complete corporate organizational chart, including any parent entities and/or corporate affiliates. Attestation that the organization is not an eligible hospital and has no eligible professionals, or documentation that the number of eligible professionals that assign their EHR incentive program revenue to the organization total less than 30% of the organization's clinical staff. You must submit a current use of health IT substantiation form, attachment A2, an officer certification form and signature page, attachment A3. The proposal narrative, again, to be no longer than 8 pages and contain all elements. A signed organizational approval letter stating support for the proposed project. If applicable, an EHR current product table found in attachment B. An application summary sheet form, attachment D. Authorized application signature and acceptance form, attachment E, and any exceptions to the general terms and conditions, if any, attachment F. Please remember that this presentation is an overview. Applicants should read the important details about each application requirement that are contained within the solicitation. A checklist, part of which is reproduced on this slide, is available on the MIHI website as a resource in constructing your proposal packages. We encourage applicants to submit questions by email. Note that the deadline to submit questions for posting on the website is today at 5 p.m. However, MIHI may address additional inquiries if resources permit. We would also encourage you to frequent MIHI's website for upcoming events and other resources. In particular, note that we will be holding a webinar later this month to walk through MIHI's new EHR Planning and Procurement Toolkit, designed to be a resource to organizations through the various stages of acquiring or upgrading their health IT system. We'll now take any questions that have been submitted during this webinar. Olivia?
Our first question is, under the EHR product section of the application, it states that if the applicant has an EHR, they should submit certain information about the products used. So this includes subsystems currently installed, such as ADLs, therapy, or MMQ systems that the applicant intends to integrate into the EHR.
Sean, would you like to talk to that?
Sure. So as part of the application, we're requesting that you submit to us your EHR products, and we recognize that organizations may have multiple products there. So we would ask that you do submit those EHR products. If you have certified ones, that's an obvious one. For those that are not, there may be some other ones that move into more the care management. There may be more practice management or billing management systems. I would err on the side of including more of them than less of them. But generally, we're looking for clinical systems that support clinical care in your practice.
Thank you.
The second question, is there a preference on eQIP's part that a provider install a standalone, fully integrated EHR over an approach that ties together or integrates several unrelated systems into an EHR?
In general, the program requires certified EHR technology, and with the goal of eventually interoperability and connecting through the Mass Highway. We're not suggesting one method over another, but I would keep the milestones in mind as far as which would be the easier approach to meet those milestones and ensure interoperability.
Will the slideshow be available to attendees?
Yes, the slideshow and a recording of this webinar will be available on the website.
Is an organization able to modify its plan or approach after it has submitted its proposal?
The proposal is to determine eligibility and for us to look at your approach. If you look at the requirement for milestone 1, it's a detailed transformation plan, much more detailed than what is submitted in the application. So that is where we will look for the more elaboration and detail around how you intend to do the milestones. Any other questions? One question that has come up quite frequently that I'm going to repeat here is we have had inquiries about whether because an organization already has an EHR, they are ineligible for the program. And you may look that achievement of milestone 1 does not require having an EHR. However, subsequent milestones do require an EHR. So you may apply whether you have an EHR at this point or not. Any other questions? We encourage questions submitted by the website. We would like as many organizations to apply to reach interoperability, and we hope that this answered many of your questions. Oh, and one more question.
Does the EHR in use have to be CCHIT certified?
We require certified EHR to reach milestones 2, 3, and 4. If you have a non-certified EHR at this point, that doesn't preclude you from eligibility, but your system would have to be modified or certified prior to reaching the other milestone. Other questions? Again, this webinar and previous webinars that went through the details of the milestones in the program in more detail are available on the website. There's recordings of these and frequently asked questions. We recommend that you check back frequently, and if you have any more questions, we will answer them on the website for all to see. All right, great. Well, thank you all very much.